didn't rise tonight. It was raised. In the charcoal hush before battle, two bloodlines lift their eyes to the same pale judge. Lycans sharpen oaths, werewolves sharpen teeth. And somewhere between order and hunger, a single blade waits for the throat that deserves it. You're with whispering narratives, where the forest keeps its dead, and the dead keep their promises, stories for feared junkies, transformation addicts, and lore hunters who don't flinch when the night looks back. Stay close. When the first howl breaks, it won't be theirs, it'll be yours. Tonight we enter the killing field the moon built with prophecy. This is the war of the Howling Blood. They say the first night of a war is quiet, like the world inhales and forgets how to breathe out. I learned that's true only when two enemies share the same mother. The moon hung blunt and heavy, a butcher's thumbprint glazed in frost. In her light, the Lycans waited in formation, helm's wolf crest stamped, coats strapped tight. Silver runes etched along braces in lines that remembered older winters. Behind their discipline, I heard prayer, words filed sharp. Across the field, the werewolves crouched in broken shadows, rib cages levering like bellows, breath fogging the air with a wet animal punctuation. Their alpha, the blood alpha, watched without blinking. Not a curse, not a miracle, just an inevitability wrapped in fur and tendon. He lifted his chin and the forest tilted to hear him. A tremble rolled through the pines as if the roots jostled for better seats. Between them, between us, lay the glyph circle. 13 stones inked with a script that tasted like iron on the tongue and rang in the teeth if you looked too long. That ring was older than either bloodline's proudest story. Some said the moon carved it like a brand. Others that men did it to keep score with gods. Tonight it would choose which howl gets to keep the night. I stood at the edge, recorder in, my chest and cowardice in my bones. Call me Thane, scribe, witness, historian, regrettably mortal. The Lycans had given me a token, a chain etched with their creed, order before hunger. The werewolves gave me nothing but a look that said, if you run, you'll teach us to chase better. I decided not to run. The moon prefers an audience. The Lycan line knelt as one and kissed their blades, each steel mouth whispering a silver-lit fog. General Kaelor, scar along the cheek like a claw had signed its name, raised his gauntlet. We do not hunt, we correct, he said. His voice carried. Like law behind him, banners hissed, fabric snapping like reprimands. The werewolves answered with a ripple of shoulders and a popping of joints, the prelude to a dozen bodies remembering they had other shapes. You'll want to know who screamed. First, you always do, you'll swear it was a beast. But no, the first scream that night wore armor. Kaelor strode forward to the glyph circle and cut his palm. The blood curled in the air like a spell deciding whether to land. Witness, he told me, and pressed his hand to stone. Runes flared, cold fire, blue as forgotten mornings. On the opposite edge, the blood alpha padded in, all measured menace. He lowered his head until the moon made a white path down his spine and opened his jaws over the stone. Blood fell, the circle brightened, the trees leaned in. Choice woke up, a wind moved with a wolf's cautious step. The stones answered like bells rung underwater. My recorder stuttered. The tape became a dark river with teeth. I caught a name inside the sound, a name the air did not give lightly. Moon Fang. Every war has a throat. This artifact was the knife meant for it. If you think the glyphs bind monsters, you're close. They bind histories, and histories drag bodies after them like tails. The circle pulsed once, then again, and every Lycan helm turned as if pulled by a magnet made of lore. Across from them, the werewolves trembled in an almost ritual unison, like the music had started and muscle merely obeyed. For a heartbeat, the two sides were twins, heads bowed, teeth bared, shoulders lifted, and I saw what the elders tried to hide. Blood remembers what stories deny. No one crossed the thought aloud. The moon dislikes spoilers. Behind the lines, I heard a smaller breath. A young Lycan, barely past his second shift, palmed a charm at his throat. Not a soldier's token, a hunter's. His eyes slid toward a tree line where a single pale figure hung back, a she-wolf, lean as famine, watching him instead of the general. I wrote it down because secrets never miss their cue. Kaelor lifted his sword and the runes up the blade lit in sequence, a procession. Of obedience, the Blood Alpha answered by standing taller until his shadow folded over the nearest stones and refused to move. Somewhere deep, bone creaked. First note of a familiar song. The field changed temperature. Even the cold got out of the way. Witness, Kaelor said again, to me or to the moon. Mark what ends. He drove the tip into the earth. The werewolves sank. Lower, claws hooking soil like they were sewing themselves to the world. And then silence crackled. Fade all sounds to a single thread. The slow unzipping of a Lycan gauntlet strap. A howl split the sky so clean it left edges. Not a beast's howl, a man's. From the Lycan ranks, helm rocking back arching, General Kaelor drew breath as if drowning, and the change climbed his spine like fire discovering a wick. I saw the horror first in the faces around him, the disciplined fear of soldiers who'd rehearsed every nightmare but this. His jaw hitched, his eyes blew wide. His teeth remembered older work. If Kaelor breaks here, the chain of command snaps, and discipline dies faster than heroes. The Blood Alpha didn't move. He knew victory sometimes arrives disguised as your enemy's embarrassment. Kaelor's hand, the one inscribed with a lifetime of oaths, twitched, claw half-born. He raised it like he might strike himself to stop the betrayal his bones were planning. Hold, someone barked. The order bounced off him like bark off lightning. The glyph circle flared and the name rose again. Moon Fang, this time with a direction, east. The forest breathed yes. I stepped back, heel catching on a root that hadn't been there a second ago. The moon likes to trip you right before the truth. When I steadied, Kaelor's gaze found me. For a blink, the general wasn't a man, wasn't a wolf. He was a mirror, and in it I saw the war's real face. Not purity versus corruption, but genealogy versus confession. His knuckles blackened, a tendon flexed, carving a new path. The sound wasn't a crack. It was a decision. Record this, Kaelor said, voice shaking into 2 tracks. If I turn, the line does not. His lieutenant, helmet etched with obedience before victory, stepped in, hand hovering like a prayer denied, across the circle. The Blood Alpha began to smile with his eyes. Wolves don't grin, they anticipate. And because the moon respects theater, the first blood came not from a charge, but from a secret. The young Lycan, the one with the hunter's charm, slipped from rank, moving toward the tree line, toward the watching she-wolf mission. Betrayal? Love? The war flexed, ready to bite on any answer I wrote. The charm glinted. The she-wolf raised her head like a queen noticing a courier. If you missed this, you'd blame strategy for what devotion started, for fear junkies. The safest ranks are just better marked graves. For lore hunters, bloodlines don't fork. They braid for transformation addicts. Every promise is a hinge, and tonight they all swing. Kaelor roared, a 2-note sound, man and beast harmonized by pain, and forced the change back down like shoving a storm into a bottle. He won for now. The ranks exhaled. The Blood Alpha finally moved, one deliberate step, placing a paw on the glowing stone. The circle answered with a new line of light that ran east into the trees, pointing like the bone of a saint. Moon Fang had chosen its rumor. Advance, Kaelor ordered, voice raw. The war began with a step toward a story, not at an enemy. That's how old wars like to be fought. By chasing nouns, if you felt the chill of that first howl, if you heard a general's bones argue with his vows. Stay with us. Subscribe before the night takes you, because the next sound you hear might be your own voice learning how to scream. The forest opened like a ribcage, every tree a bone waiting to break. The glyph's light had burned a line into the soil, eastward, deliberate, insistent. I followed because even a coward knows some directions are chosen for you. The Lycans advanced in formation, steel kissing steel as their shields shifted. Behind them, the werewolves slunk low, moving in arcs. No need for ranks when hunger writes its own mathematics. The blood alpha trotted with the patience of a predator who'd already marked the ending. His eyes fixed not on Kaelor, but on the line of light, Moon Fang, a name dressed like a weapon, carried like a curse. Kaelor kept his jaw locked. The tremor in his hands had calmed, but discipline was not the same as peace. Every few steps, the sound of tendon whispered from under his gauntlet, a reminder that betrayal doesn't always come from your enemy. Sometimes it grows in your wrist. We passed markers older than kingdoms, wolf skulls nailed into trees, charred glyphs from forgotten rituals. Some were Lycan work, precise and purposeful. Others were sloppy, frenzied, the afterbirth of werewolf madness. I scribbled them down, but the paper warped with damp, the ink running like it had been warned. What was Moon Fang? A sword hammered from lunar ore, a tooth yanked from the first. Wolf, the gods cursed. Or a story told so many times it solidified into metal. The forest would answer, but not politely. Kaelor's lieutenant, Relic, leaned close. "General, your blood's not done with you." He said it like an order, not a concern. Kaelor ignored him. The moon ignores most prayers too. The young Lycan, the one with the hunter's charm, kept drifting sideways, eyes pulling toward the tree line where the pale she-wolf padded, ghost quiet. She never entered the formation's light, but she never left their sight either. A shadow that chose to be noticed. Every soldier pretended not to see her. Pretending is what keeps order from becoming panic. I did not pretend. My recorder caught her breath, a sound like parchment tearing underwater. It scratched the tape. If she wasn't bloodline, what was she? Some third breed? Some exile? My pen whispered a question the trees repeated back. Who invited her? If there's a third bloodline in this war, you won't hear them knock. You'll just notice fewer bodies standing at dawn. The march tightened when the glyph's path cut across a river. The water was shallow, no wider than a dozen strides, but the current spoke louder than the air. The surface shimmered silver, unnaturally bright. As if the moon had poured herself into it for safekeeping, the Lycans waded across in step, ripples sinking like clock hands. The werewolves hesitated. Water reflects, and reflections sometimes show more than shapes. One wolf bent low to lap at the surface. His muzzle touched, and the reflection looked back with different eyes. Human eyes. The wolf staggered, whimpered, then convulsed. His body writhed as if drowning on dry land, limbs snapping at grotesque angles, face dragging itself. Between two truths, his brothers backed away. No help offered. The curse prefers a solo audience. Kaelor barked, "Forward." Leave him cold, clipped but not heartless, just efficient. The war hadn't started in earnest, but already casualties decorated the ledger. The blood alpha did not interfere. He watched with approval, as if to say, "This is what you are, fragile, confused, haunted by faces you used to own." By the time the wolf's body stilled, the water had swallowed his reflection. Only ripples remained, carrying his scream downstream. The she-wolf on the bank tilted her head once, a mourner's nod, then padded. Along all sound drains, except the faint dripping of river water from armor. A crow calls once, then silence presses in like stone. We climbed the opposite bank, and the glyph path flared brighter, burning a line deeper into the soil. It led toward an outcrop of stone shaped like fangs driven into the earth. The air thickened. The Lycans faltered for the first time. Boots, dragging. Werewolves paced with eagerness, their claws tapping faster, a drumbeat only they could hear. Relic finally snapped. He grabbed Kaelor's arm. "General, the change will not wait. You felt it. I saw it. If you betray us." Kaelor shoved him back, fury barely sheathed. "If I fall, chain me. But until then, we march." The moon will not write my story without me holding the pen. I believed him. The problem is, the moon keeps spare pens. Some of you already know this legend. Moon Fang is older than any pack's memory. Comment below if you've heard whispers of what it really is, and which bloodline you think deserves it. The forest is watching who speaks first. The outcrop rose like a jawbone, stone fangs biting a sky too pale to be merciful. The glyph path speared straight into a cleft between the rocks, a narrow throat-like entry where the air smelled of wet iron and old fur. The Lycans tightened, ranks, shields up, boots finding rhythm because rhythm feels like safety when meaning is in short supply. The werewolves fanned wider, circling, breath sinking to a pulse older than drums. I felt it before it happened, the way a room feels different. The second before a light bulb dies, the wind stepped aside. The pines quit their gossip. Even the river behind us held its tongue like it wanted to hear the punchline. From inside the cleft came a click, not claws, not steel, a bone against bone sound that made every knuckle in. The valley, remember the future. You think ambush starts with a roar. It doesn't. It starts with the quiet thing you were too proud to call fear. General Kaelor lifted his sword, and the runes along the blade shivered. Not from his hand, they were answering a different hand altogether. To our left, someone exhaled wrong, and to our right the young Lycan, hunter's charm flashing, took one step too far from his line. The arm cleft, ripped open with motion. They came not as a wave, but as a choreographed accident. 4 shadows, then 6, then a dozen, leaping from rock at angles that should have cancelled each other. Instead, they braided midair, werewolves. Too many. Too fast. The first hit the Lycan shield wall with a sound like a library collapsing, rigid knowledge meeting hungry teeth. Relic planted his standard, barked a command, and the wall absorbed the impact. For 3 heartbeats, discipline held. On the 4th, a wolf punched through a seam and turned a soldier into a red lesson about geometry. Kaelor didn't call retreat. He advanced. His blade sang a line only Silver knows. A wolf's jaw met the song and failed. Teeth clattered on stone like spilled dice. Another lunged. Kaelor pivoted, drove runes through ribs, and I learned Silver can make steam of blood before it bothers to drip. The blood alpha did not join. He walked along the edge of the fight like a king touring a festival built out of other men's endings. His eyes tracked the cleft, not the carnage. He was waiting to see what wanted us here. The young Lycan reached the tree line. A pale she-wolf stepped out as if invited to a dance where everyone else brought knives. She didn't bare her teeth. She lowered her head, not in submission, in sorrow. He stopped like grief had put a chain on his ankle. "Don't," I whispered. Without meaning to, the recorder swallowed it and made it official history. A werewolf slammed into Relic. The standard fell. I heard the flag's metal tip hit rock and knew with a bureaucrat's certainty that morale just lost a signature. Kaelor cut the attacker down in 2 strokes, too honest to be called beautiful. He reached for the banner. His hand didn't close as a man's transformation crumb. The gauntlet's leather creaked into a new idea of itself. Nails pressed up under steel like seeds germinating under snow. His wrist bulged, tendons stuttering as if caught between oaths. The runes across his bracer brightened, then flickered, then chose not to look. Kaelor stilled. I swear the whole battle leaned to hear his bones decide. He forced his hand open. The banner rose. The wall rallied. Swords returned to their lanes. For a moment we remembered the illusion that wars obey rules. Then the cleft spoke. Not in words, in memory. The sound was a pack's birth cry inside a cave. The glyph path lit like a fuse. Every werewolf snapped. Toward it, every Lycan flinched as if a childhood story had asked for their name. A shape stepped out, clutching the night like a cloak, too tall for a wolf, too wrong for a man, fur matted with old ash, eyes glassy with prayer or fever, in its left hand, a shard that glowed with the white of frozen lightning. Moon Fang, not a sword, not a tooth, a broken piece of something that didn't like being broken. Relics don't choose sides, they choose outcomes. Ask the dead which side they were on. They'll tell you the losing one. The shard hummed a pitch my teeth tried to flee. Wolves shrank from it by instinct, then fought that instinct with appetite. Lycans leaned toward it without moving their feet, a soldier's greed for a weapon that quiets nightmares. Kaelor took one step, the blood alpha took none. The young Lycan took 3, eyes on the she-wolf, not the relic. She stared at the shard like it was an old sin wearing new clothes. A werewolf broke ranks for the shard. 2 Lycans lunged to intercept. They collided, became a single argument about who deserved the honor of dying first. The wolf went over them, a neat leap ruined by Kaelor, who met it midair and changed direction with the authority of gravity. When it remembers you owe it money. He landed, blade up, and for a second I thought the story would be kind. General triumph, relic secured, curse postponed. Then the shard pulsed. Everything near it remembered its first shape. Kaelor's jaw hitched, his shoulders broadened, spine flaring. With light beneath skin like a lighthouse warning ships that were already wrecks, he drove the blade down anyway. The wolf died obediently, but Kaelor kept going. The sword went into stone, stone squealed, runes on the blade answered in panic. His other hand, claw now, yes, claw, closed around the banner's haft and cracked it. Rennick shouted, command, and prayer welded. The ranks faltered, reality bending around the shard's gravity. The blood alpha finally smiled with his mouth, a thin, human expression borrowed from mockery. Found you, he said to the relic, in a voice that peeled bark. Wolf got to me, I don't know how. One moment I was history with a pen. The next I was meat with a deadline. It opened its mouth around my shoulder and stopped, eyes sliding to the shard like the relic had yanked its hunger by the collar. It whimpered once, small, embarrassed, and turned to leap away. Behind it, the pale she-wolf stepped between the young Lycan and the shard. She spoke. Not you, she said, to him or the shard or the moon. I couldn't tell. The word made frost bloom on the banner splinters. Kaelor roared. It wasn't a man's sound. It wasn't a wolf's either. It was a border crossing. He let the change take his left side, arm, ribs, part of the throat, while his right clung to humanity like it owed him money, half and half. A heresy both bloodlines would execute on sight if they weren't so busy trying not to die. If Kaelor completes that change, the Lycans lose a general. If he halts it here, he becomes a legend, and legends have very short life expectancies. He charged anyway, half man, half verdict, aiming not for the shard but for the thing holding it. The creature raised Moon Fang like a priest who forgot which god he serves. Shard met silver. Light tore noise into ribbons. The shockwave threw. Wolves backward and knelt Lycans without asking. My ears filled with bees. When the air came back, the creature had fallen. The shard skittered across stone and stopped at the she-wolf's feet. She didn't pick it up. She looked at the young Lycan and lowered her head again. And this time I understood the gesture. Not sorrow, recognition. Kaelor staggered, the wolf in him retreating like a fire ashamed of its smoke. He planted the broken banner in the stone because men need poles to stand up straighter. He dragged breath in ragged handspans and found me with his eyes, demanding the only mercy I could give. The truth recorded correctly, if the snap of bone made you wince, if the light off that shard crawled under your skin, hit like and tell the algorithm. You survived the first charge, we're not done, not even close. The shockwave hadn't ended the fight, it had only reset the board. The outcrop groaned under the weight of new silence, the kind that makes soldiers wonder whether the noise to come will include their names. The shard, Moon Fang, rested in the dirt between a pale she-wolf and a trembling young Lycan. Both ignored it. That alone terrified me. Weapons want to be claimed when neither hand nor paw dares. The air itself starts petitioning for a carrier. Kaelor pulled himself upright against the fractured banner, half-changed arm flexing like a separate animal begging for the leash. The Lycans around him steadied, but steadied doesn't mean safe. Their wall had gaps now. Wolves prowled those seams, patient as undertakers. Then the blood alpha moved, not a charge, not even a lunge. He simply walked, his shadow sliding across corpses, his eyes reflecting the shard's glow like mirrors too honest for comfort. He wasn't after Kaelor. He wasn't after the shard. He was after the moment after, when the line between order and hunger snapped, and history would have to decide who wrote it. You want to know when discipline dies? Not when the first man falls, when the second one runs. It happened fast. A Lycan at the edge, seeing too many teeth and too much prophecy in one night, turned heel and bolted for the tree line. He didn't make it 3 strides. The wolves didn't chase him. They let him go. The forest did the chasing. His scream folded back into itself, cut off not by bite but by absence. That absence settled over the ranks like a contagious disease. Kaelor roared. His voice had a double timbre again. Half human, half something the moon had hidden in its archives. Hold, he commanded. The ranks listened, but the obedience cracked around the edges like old ice. The glyph path still burned east. The shard's pulse agreed. The forest whispered faster, so the Lycans advanced, not in formation now, but in knots, each cluster defending its own heartbeat. The werewolves followed above, leaping branch to branch, eyes raining down like coals from a fire too proud to die. We reached a clearing where the moonlight pooled thick as milk. That's when the chase began. A howl ripped the sky sideways. Wolves dropped from the canopy in arcs of hunger. The Lycans sprinted, shields raised, blades thrumming. I stumbled with them, recorder pressed to my ribs, pen scribbling half-truths to catch up later. One wolf clipped my shoulder, claws raked. Parchment, not flesh. My notes bled instead of me. Paper is braver than bone. Kaelor kept to the front, half-changed arm tearing branches aside, forging a path no human could follow. His soldiers trailed in his wake, Relic barking orders like a drowning man counting waves. Behind us, the blood alpha padded, not running, just measuring. He knew the moon pays best for endurance, not speed. The young Lycan broke from the group again, chasing the pale she-wolf through the trees. She didn't look back. That's how you know someone wants to be followed. He chased anyway. The shards. Glow flickered behind them like a lighthouse scolding 2 ships that had forgotten the ocean. Who is she? If she isn't Lycan and she isn't wolf, then what third story does she serve? Maybe the shard doesn't need a carrier, it needs a witness, and maybe that's worse. The chase split the company into fragments. One squad ducked right, another left, each believing their path safer. Wolves divided accordingly, but never too thin. Like they had learned long ago that panic tastes best when shared. I lost track of Kaelor for a moment. When I found him again, he was ahead of me, sprinting like both halves of his body had agreed to a single cruelty. Keep running until one half collapses. His blade still glowed, but the runes faltered, flickering as if ashamed to be part of this compromise. A wolf dropped onto me. Its weight folded me into the dirt. Hot breath carved my ear. Before the bite landed, a Lycan slammed his shield into its ribs. The wolf rolled, snarling. My savior didn't survive the counter. His throat went red under moonlight, a wound so wide it made my pen hesitate. I crawled forward, dirt filling my teeth. My recorder caught the gurgle. History isn't merciful. Kaelor burst into another clearing, this one crowned by a circle of stones older than war. Not glyphs, graves, bones stacked as monuments, jawbones lashed into totems. Skulls cracked open to show the moon what was inside. Here the shard's hum grew louder, so loud it wasn't sound anymore. It was suggestion. Wolves surrounded us. The Lycans formed a ragged circle, shields up, blades trembling. Kaelor planted himself at the center, half beast, half general, all fury. His left arm twitched, fur bristling, claw half-born. His right clung to the banner splinter, as if symbols were stronger than muscle. The blood alpha entered the grave circle like a guest of honor. His gaze swept the dead stones, then Kaelor, then me. He knew a scribe is a second death. He let me live for now, because witnesses make the meal last longer. If glowing eyes stared through your window, if teeth tracked your footsteps through the night, where would you run? Tell me in the comments. I want to see who among you would survive the chase. The grave circle didn't just hold silence, it enforced it. Even the wolves slowed, claws reluctant to scrape the soil as if afraid to wake what lay beneath. The stones loomed, each one stacked with relics of dead wars, jawbones threaded on, twine, femurs carved with runes, skulls scorched black as if kissed by lightning. The air felt heavy, a courtroom waiting for testimony. At the center, the shard pulsed like a vein of light in solid stone, not a weapon, not a relic, a wound. The moon had cut herself once, and this was the piece that fell. The pale she-wolf finally spoke again. Her voice wasn't howl or growl. It was human, cracked with the weight of words too long unused. This is where the pact broke. She stared at the shard, not the Lycans, not the wolves. Her tone carried the solemnity of scripture recited in a ruined church. The young Lycan whispered, trembling. "Who are you?" She lifted her gaze, and for the first time the moonlight framed her not as wolf, not as woman, but as both. Her eyes burned with a feral gold rim, pupils thin and vertical. "I am the blood they don't mention, the first child of the curse. Not Lycan, not wolf, both. The night remembers me as its mistake." The ranks faltered. Even Kaelor, clutching his half-shifted arm, drew back. The blood alpha tilted his head, curious, almost reverent. So the rumor wore a skin after all. If the Lycans claim order and the werewolves claim hunger, what does the hybrid claim? Legacy or damnation? The she-wolf stepped closer to the shard. The ground answered her pause with frost, veins of white racing across soil, cracking skulls, freezing dirt until the air hissed with brittle sound. This shard isn't a weapon, it is judgment. It divides what cannot reconcile. Man, beast, order, hunger. Every side believes it deserves the night. The shard remembers differently. Kaelor spat blood, fury spilling into his half-beast face. "Then it will choose us," the blood alpha growled low and amused. "No, it already has. It chose to wound the moon itself, and wounds do not heal. They spread." The shard brightened, humming louder, its light carved shadows into long claws across the circle. My recorder juddered, the tape warping as if reluctant to archive this truth. "Still," I wrote, "because if history can't bear its own weight, it deserves to collapse." A fissure split open at the shard's base, shallow but deep enough to spill black mist. The mist twisted like smoke with purpose. Shapes flickered inside, wolves half-born, men half-remembered, snarling and pleading all at once. The grave circle wasn't memorial. It was containment. Every prison is also a nursery, and sometimes what grows inside doesn't stop at the bars. The she-wolf's voice dropped to a whisper, carried on the shard's hum. Moon Fang was once whole, a spear forged when the gods tried to kill their own reflection. They shattered it into pieces so no single hand could end or claim the curse. This shard is one piece, the rest. Her eyes flicked toward the east, deeper forest. "The rest still wait," Kaelor staggered forward. "Then we claim this one, and with it, the others. We end the wolves," the blood alpha countered, sharp as fang. "No, we free them. We free what was caged, in blood and oath. Then the world belongs to us again." The shard pulsed violently at their words, the mist thickening, claw shapes swiping the air like hands groping for a latch. The grave circle groaned, stones trembling, bone totems rattling, like teeth in a giant's jaw. The young Lycan clutched his charm, stepping between them all. His voice cracked but did not break. "If both sides claim it, then both sides are wrong. The shard doesn't serve orders. It serves the moon, and the moon doesn't choose. It punishes the—" She-wolf's lips curled into something between smile and snarl. "He understands." Kaelor's soldiers shifted, unease spreading faster than discipline could crush it. Rennick barked for order, but no one obeyed. Even obedience has limits when graves start whispering. The blood alpha stepped into the center, towering over the shard. He bent, not to take. It but to listen. His ears twitched, his jaw tightened, then he smiled again, wider. It says one of us carries the rest of the spear, broken pieces waiting in bloodlines. Tell me, General, why does your arm answer it before your mouth does? Kaelor froze, half-shift arm trembling, claw twitching toward the shard as if pulled by leash. Horror rippled through his soldiers. They weren't following a general anymore. They were following a host. Curses like this don't end. They echo. Subscribe now and join the archive before the next howl. The shard isn't done, and neither are we. The grave circle could not hold. The shard's hum split into voices, dozens, then hundreds, layered like a choir rehearsing murder. Bones rattled louder, skulls cracked wider, and the black mist thickened until it had fingers, claws, faces that never fully finished themselves. The Lycans closed ranks out of reflex, shields trembling, blades glowing dimly under runes that suddenly looked more like warnings than promises. The werewolves shifted back and forth, hunger twisting into hesitation. Even the Blood Alpha froze a heartbeat longer than pride allowed. Kaelor stood in the middle, torn between halves, his clawed arm stretching toward the shard while his human hand clutched the banner splinter like prayer beads. The strain carved agony into his face. Sweat, blood, fur mixing like rival signatures on the same treaty. The she-wolf hybrid, anomaly, living wound, stepped forward until frost bloomed beneath her paws. The shard answered, flaring so bright the mist recoiled. It remembers me, she whispered. Because I was born of its fracture. I am the echo of the spear that broke the moon. The Blood Alpha snarled, words jagged with hunger. Then wield it. Tear the night open, Kaelor growled back, his voice doubled again. No, give it to me. I'll end this curse forever. The shard pulsed violently, sending fractures through the soil. A skeletal hand burst from the ground. Then another. Then a dozen. Wolves made of shadow and bone hauled themselves free, ribs groaning, eyes burning, white. The prison had become a nursery indeed, and the children were hungry, every grave whispers. But when the bones start listening back, you're already in the wrong story. The mist-born wolves charged, shields buckled, flesh tore, Lycans slashed and stabbed. But silver barely slowed them. These weren't flesh, weren't cursed blood. They were memory weaponized, wolves from the First War, unwilling to stay dead. Kaelor roared and met them head-on, claw and blade moving in chaotic harmony. He fought like two men sharing one rage. A rune-lit strike shattered a ribcage spectre, his beast arm ripped another's head clean, jawbone cracking like kindling. His soldiers rallied, taking courage from his fury, but I saw the truth. He wasn't fighting for them, he was fighting for control of himself. The young Lycan stumbled into the fray, charm in one hand, sword in the other. A mist wolf lunged, and the pale she-wolf intercepted, slamming it into the dirt with a snarl that turned the frost crimson. Her gold-rimmed eyes burned with recognition as she shielded him. Bloodlines don't fork, they braid, she hissed. Don't forget it. The Blood Alpha finally joined the battle, ripping through mist wolves like parchment. Each kill he made, the shard pulsed stronger, as if fed by his carnage. He didn't fight against them. He fought to prove himself worthy of their inheritance. His jaws closed on a phantom throat. His claws shredded an echo ribcage. He howled, and the mist answered with more bodies. If the shard feeds on death, then fighting it is worship. And gods always collect tithes. The battlefield collapsed into chaos, specters and flesh tangled until even the moon couldn't tell her children apart. The ground drank more than it could hold, bleeding mud up to the ankles. Kaelor staggered toward the shard, half-shift threatening to consume him entirely. His soldiers screamed for him to stop. Rennick tried to intercept, but Kaelor swatted him aside with the claw. His human eye wept, his wolf eye burned. If I hold it, he shouted, the war ends. The she-wolf blocked him, fur bristling, voice low but edged in steel. If you hold it, the war becomes you. The shard's hum reached a pitch that split teeth. I dropped to my knees, recorder screaming with feedback. Through the static, I caught words not meant for men. One of you carries the rest. Unite us or bury us, Kaelor lunged. The she-wolf met him. Their clash knocked the shard into the dirt, and for a moment it rolled free, pulsing between bloodlines, unclaimed. The young Lycan looked at it. His charm snapped in his fist. Beads, scattering into the mud. He hesitated. His hand shook. The blood alpha surged forward, mist wolves parting around him like loyal dogs. His jaws opened wide. His shadow fell across the shard. Victory grinned with fangs. Kaelor howled, voice tearing between two species. The she-wolf screamed, frost exploding in jagged veins. The young Lycan cried out wordless, and the shard, Moon Fang, burst into light so savage the sky turned black. Around it, when the radiance cleared, the battlefield had changed. The mist wolves were gone. The graves had caved inward. Stone teeth swallowed whole. The shard no longer rested on the ground. It floated, humming, waiting. Kaelor knelt, clutching his clawed arm, half man, half beast, face a ruin of grief. The she-wolf stood unbowed, breath frosting the air. The young Lycan stood between them both, eyes wide, fingers still reaching, and the blood alpha. He laughed. Not triumphant, not defeated, just delighted. It chose none of us. It chose the war itself. This isn't the last transformation. The next one is worse. Follow the howl to the story waiting on screen. You'll want to see how deep the shard cuts. Smoke clung to the grave circle like a shroud. The mist wolves had vanished, but their echo still gnawed the air. Every breath tasted of burnt bone and frozen iron. The shard hovered above the wreckage, its light no longer violent but steady, cruel in its calm. A lantern for a road no one wanted to walk. Kaelor knelt in the dirt, his half-shifted arm twitching like it didn't know whether to retreat or advance. His soldiers ringed him, uncertain whether to protect their general or to strike him down before his betrayal finished growing. Relic raised his sword, trembling. "General, you're not one of us anymore." Kaelor lifted his human eye, wet with grief. "I was never one of you, not fully. The shard knew it. It used me." His beast eye rolled back, blackened, burning. He tried to steady his claw on the banner splinter, but the wood cracked under its grip. Symbols break faster than bone. The blood alpha paced at the edge of the circle, head tilted like a scholar who'd just solved his favorite riddle. "The shard chose war, and you, General, are war-wearing skin." He grinned, teeth like lit candles in his skull. "You'll tear your own line apart before I even have to howl." The pale she-wolf stood still as frost. Her eyes never left the young Lycan, who clutched his broken charm and stared back at her as if she were both mother and omen. She whispered, soft enough the graves leaned closer to hear. "You are proof that bloodlines braid. The shard didn't reject you. It's waiting for you to decide. Relics don't end wars, they archive them, so the next generation can choose whether to repeat the story." I scribbled until the ink bled through the page. My recorder ticked like a dying clock, capturing the moment when history bent but did not break. I wanted to stop, but the moon likes a witness, and once she picks you, quitting isn't an option. Kaelor tried to rise. His soldiers stepped back, shields tightening. "Relic," shouted, but the fear in his voice betrayed him. The general's claw lashed out once, not at them, but at the dirt, carving a trench so deep the graves themselves flinched. He gasped, forcing his body back toward humanity, skin sizzling where fur receded. For now, he won. But even victories can rot. The blood alpha turned, padding into the forest, his laugh trailing like a curse. "We'll meet again. Next time the shard won't be shy." The wolves followed, vanishing between pines, leaving their silence as a wound. The Lycans stood, frozen soldiers without an ending, warriors without a verdict. The shard's light bathed them all, impartial, accusing. No cheers, no relief, only exhaustion dressed as survival. The pale she-wolf walked past them, unchallenged. Frost spread with every step. She paused at the Young Lycan sighed, touched her muzzle to his hand and whispered, "When the rest awaken, you'll be hunted by both sides. Remember that hesitation is also a choice." Then she melted into the trees, vanishing like fog. If a war ends without a victor, is it really over, or just catching its breath? Kaelor finally spoke, voice raw, human again. "This isn't finished. The shard waits for the rest. And when it's whole, the moon won't punish us anymore. She'll bury us." His men lowered their blades, but none sheathed them. Trust doesn't recover in a single night. I staggered from the circle, recorder still rolling. My hand shook, but I whispered into the mic anyway. "The war of the Howling Blood has no victor, only survivors. And in their eyes the curse is not broken. It's rehearsing." Above us the moon slipped free of its clouds. For a moment I swore I saw her grin. The pack grows stronger with every whisper. Share this tale if you dare. And join us, before the curse finds you alone. The moon keeps her archives full. Tonight, she just added your name. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist. Linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them, and trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.